The Radio Forest Podcast.
Dusty Slay, welcome, man. Nice to talk to you. Hey, Working Man on Netflix, congratulations. A lot of comedians these days talk about, I'm just going to release it to YouTube or release it on my own. But Netflix is still a pretty big deal for having a comedy special on there.
I mean, Netflix is the biggest of deals. And, honestly, that was my plan. My plan was just to release this thing on my own. But, my management and we decided, well, it looks really good. It sounds good. The jokes are great. Let's just pitch it to some places. Obviously, Netflix being the biggest, that's where we wanted to end up. But we were like, let's just see if they'll buy it. And I wasn't in the room, but I imagine Netflix was like, hey, this is one of the best specials we've ever seen. Let's make it happen.
Yeah, you've got country music, T-shirt, tucking, coffee. They're like, we're all in.
I tried to put all the 90s I could put in this thing.
You are the only comedian I've heard have solid jokes on dipping, and I haven't heard the word Kodiak since college.
Yeah, well, that's why I say it the way I do. I want people to know that it was Kodiak Wintergreen that I was dipping, but people don't know the name brand. So I have to go and tell them, I have to say Skoal just so they get what I'm talking about. And then somehow people think Kodiak was the cheap stuff. And I'm like, no, you're talking about Grizzly. Kodiak is a premium dip out here.
So you and I have both quit drinking, quit smoking, and quit dipping. Before I get too much into that, which of those three was the hardest for you? For me, it's dipping. I could start tomorrow. No, I could start today. I could leave this interview, get a can, and be right back into it without any sort of hesitation. I still think about it from time to time. Smoking tasted bad. Alcohol came with its own set of issues, which I'm sure you understand. But dipping, if it wasn't for the fear of cancer and losing my teeth, I'd be all in.
Well, yeah, it's hard to say. I would say cigarettes was the easiest, because cigarettes is what causes me the most problem. I love them, but they immediately physically hurt my body, where I'm like, I'm not breathing as well, and I noticed these things almost right away. So it was the easiest. Drinking was the hardest, because, in the end, when I actually was like, all right, I'm done, then I was done. There was no looking back. It was okay. But dipping is what I held on to the longest. I quit drinking and smoking, and then for about 3 more days, I dipped. And dip is amazing. It is that I'm afraid to dip. Once in a while, people will have a can of dip, and they'll offer me some, and I go, I would love to do it. I would love to just have a fun little dip here with you. But I know that I'll do that dip, and the next thing you know, I'll be buying a can at the gas station. And then my wife will be divorcing me. Yeah.
What's your favorite type of dip? For me, it was probably either in the car or in the morning with a cup of coffee and then a dip at the same time. I don't know why. That just hit the spot for me.
Well, I never was a dip and coffee guy, but I love a dip in the car. It is the best. I don't know if it was the first dip or which one was my favorite, but I used to sell pesticides, so throughout the day I had to go to different Lowe's stores. And there was just something about leaving a Lowe's store, knowing I had about an hour drive to the next one, and just putting a dip in and listening to the radio, rolling the window down. It's just a beautiful day.
Trucker hats. You've got such good hats all the time, and some of them look authentic, like they're old school, but they're still kind of new. And I know you've got your own trucker hats too, but tell me about finding other trucker hats other than the ones that have your name on them.
Well, a lot of them get sent to me or get given to me at shows now. Now, my very first one was a West Point Pepperell hat, which is a mill that both of my grandfathers worked at. My uncle was a truck driver there for a long time. And that was the first trucker hat that I started to wear on stage. But it was already so old, and I really wore it out. Now people will give me them, and that's how I get them. Now, when I film things, like if I do the Tonight Show or I do, this or that, I'll wear my own hat. My own hats are great. I love the design. They look really good. But mainly, I wear them because I own the rights to the hat. There's no copyright worries when I'm doing TV.
That's smart, yeah.
And that's what they're all like. If I do the Tonight Show, they're like, well, you don't really own the rights to that, so we can't wear that hat. I love an old school trucker hat. It's like I like a high riding trucker hat. I like one that just kind of rest on your head, you know? You're not even really wearing it so much as you're just laying it up there.
Did you help design the one that's got your name on it too? And follow-up question, Working Man was already done and then sold to Netflix. Are you involved in all the design of that too? So you're not just doing comedy and podcasts. You're also like kind of doing set design and a little bit of clothing too? Would that be fair to say?
Well, yeah, at least to some degree. I mean, I have, for the set design, I had a great director for the special. And he picked that curtain that's in the background that I love and that I've never seen anybody else have on a special. But, he picked it. But, it's like it all goes through me. They go, do you like this? Are you okay with this? And I loved it. So I did get to be involved. And with the editing of the special, I was involved every step of the way. I mean, they would edit and then deliver a copy to me. They're good at their job. And I said to them, I go, hey, I'm a comedian. You're an editor. It's like, I want you to do your thing. Sometimes I would watch it and I would go, well, I don't, because I like subtlety with comedy. So I would be like, well, this joke is so subtle that I don't want the edit to be so subtle that it's lost. It's like, I really want this to, and I don't know the best way to explain it, but I feel like, I got to work with good, creative, professional people. We were all bought in. And we got to understand the process. I don't know. It just worked well.
I think that totally makes sense because sometimes in the special, you've got jokes and you're getting to the punchline, but there might be 3 or 4 subtle jokes or some irony thrown in there too. And I think that just kind of helps to the buildup. So if you cut like one line out, you're like, well, that's a joke that half the crowd is going to get or not going to understand it till the second time they see it.
Exactly. And, there's one joke, and then I really like this joke where I talk about, having a mortician come to my show, and there's a part where I say, don't be embalming a warm body.
Yeah.
And then I say, that's something I've always said.
Yeah.
And I like that to be a very understated line. And I like not everyone to catch it. The people that catch it. But when they edited it, they kind of did a cut on it in the middle of that joke where they switched frames. And I was like, I don't want to do that. The joke's too subtle to switch frames on that joke. So I want us to, to make sure that with the edit, we're delivering, we're almost spoon feeding that part in the edit, but not in the delivery of the joke.
I love that joke. And I just want to give you a little compliment. Thank you for having like a comedy with jokes in it. It seems like nowadays there's different kinds of comedians. Some of them are just doing political stuff. There's crowd work and some comedians, and they're pretty big name comedians, they're just telling stories, but there's no real jokes. So you're just kind of up there being funny and telling jokes. And as a comedy fan, I just want to say, like, I appreciate the time you put in to write this stuff to have a payoff to watch this. There's no political leaning or you're not trying to convince me of anything. We're just laughing. And I appreciate that as a fan.
Well, I appreciate you saying that because, you're absolutely right. I mean, there has become this thing. And I'm sure it was always around to some degree. But it has become this thing where people are like, I have a voice and I have to use my voice. And I'm like, that's fine, I guess. But just be funny about it, And that's not what I want to do. I mean, who knows? Maybe at some point in my career, I suddenly am like, well, you know what? I do have a voice. But right now, I just love telling jokes. I mean, to me, that's what it's all about. It's like my job is not to tell you anything but jokes.
And you also have callbacks, which kind of I haven't seen as many of them around anymore. That used to be the staple of stand-up comedy, and you have a couple of solid ones in Working Man. Again, thank you for those.
Well, I love callbacks, and I used to talk to my advice to younger comics back in the day was always to have callbacks. I'm like, I was like, there is, can be too many callbacks where you're forcing it, and you're like, you don't want to force it. It's an opportunity for you to get an extra laugh off a joke that you've already written, and it makes your set feel complete. If you're watching a set and then 30 minutes later the joke comes back that you heard earlier, it shows that the comedian put work into the set and that there's thought going into it. And I'm like, I don't know. To me, a full set of comedy is not complete without a couple of callbacks.
And a serious question, how are your new trees doing? It sounds like you planted a crap load of everything from nut trees to fruit trees. You did a lot of work in the last couple of weeks.
Well, yeah. Unfortunately, I have not been able to get back out there and see them since I planted them. And then in Nashville, we had a ton of snow. But which snow can actually be good because the ice sits on top and then slowly it melts, so the trees are always getting watered. But, yeah, I'm so pumped. I just planted 23 trees. Me and my wife dug 23 holes with a shovel. Yeah, I'm so pumped about it. I have a bunch of other trees that I planted. I just haven't protected them well enough from the deer.
Oh,
but,
yeah.
I'm so pumped about it. I appreciate you asking about that. I love planting trees.
And I didn't get enough of the information. Is that property that was in your family? Because I know you talked about other family members had places, and I think like your grandfather had planted some trees back in the 60s, and those were still around. So is that the same property, or did you and Hannah get your own place?
No, where my grandfather's trees are, that's where my dad lives in Alabama, and we bought some land at a different part of Tennessee during COVID. When 2020 hit and COVID was happening, we were like a little bit like, well, we don't know what's going on. And for me, I was like, I just was thinking at that time, I was like, if something like that happens again, like when we have some massive shutdown, I just want to have some property where I can go and just, be able to roam around and be outside. And that's what I just was like, we're just in the suburbs, and we were able to walk around, but I'm like, I want some real property. So since COVID, we've really been working on building up just a nice, little getaway for ourselves.
Well, he's on the Nateland Podcast. He's also on the podcast with his wife. We're having a good time. His 1 hour special on Netflix now. Comedian Dusty Slay. Hey, it's great to talk to you today, Dusty, and congratulations on the special.
Yeah, thank you very much. I appreciate you having me.